The views expressed on the Final Straw Radio do not necessarily reflect those of Asheville FM, Friends of Community Radio, or any of the affiliate radio stations airing the show. From the studios of Asheville FM, 103.3 FM in Asheville, North Carolina, this is The Final Straw, and I'm William Goodenough. The show will later be archived at thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org, and you can email us with questions or suggestions at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net. Also, if you're interested in rebroadcasting any episode or segment of any show, you're free to do so. If you do so, though, just send us an email. If you care to, you can send us letters at The Final Straw, care of Asheville FM, 864 Haywood Road, Asheville, North Carolina, 28806. The show is brought to you by Firestorm Books and Coffee. Located at 610 Haywood Road, Firestorm Books and Coffee is a worker-owned cooperative in Asheville specializing in offbeat, underground, and independent literature. You can find a sample of Firestorm's catalog of books and zines, plus a full calendar of events at their website, firestorm.coop.
This week, we'll be airing the final two portions of interviews with Black Liberation Army political prisoner of war Jalil Muntaqim. Jalil will be up for parole in June of 2018. These audios aired on the awesome Prison Radio Show on CKUT. You can find more materials by Prison Radio Show at prisonradioshow.wordpress.com, and more about Jalil's case and some of his writings can be found at freejalil.com.
Hey everyone, it's William here with a short announcement. We are nearing the end of the second week of OperationPUSH, which is described in a statement released by participants as a work stoppage or laydown in at least 8 prison facilities around the state of Florida. The beginning of this plan coincided with Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday on January 15th, in protest of the deplorable conditions in Florida prisons. This comes hot on the heels of the September 9th prison strike, which took place in 2016 on the 45th anniversary of Attica, and disrupted operations in dozens, if not hundreds, of prisons across the country. This is being called the largest prison strike in the U.S., and was followed by several subsequent strikes all over. It has been difficult to get information about OperationPUSH, though. Florida prisons are being predictably recalcitrant and have also been imposing communication blackouts for even suspected participants. However, there has been one major insight into this situation in the form of an article by Kevin Rashid Johnson entitled "Florida Prisoners Are Laying It Down." In this article, Rashid, who is a prison journalist and self-taught paralegal, describes conditions within Florida prisons in detail, including the high cost of goods in the commissary, coupled with the fact of forced and unpaid labor, up to and including a culture of abuse and neglect by prison staff. In retaliation, Rashid has been thrown into an unheated cell with no working toilet and with a window that cannot properly close, making the temperature equal to the sub-zero environment outside. This is a clear sign of retaliatory torture, and surely is what Rashid calls a true emergency. It is urgently requested that people call the prison to advocate for and demand the immediate cessation of this abuse on the part of the prison. Please call Warren Barry Reddish, Florida State Prison, Rayford, Florida 32083, area code 904-368-2500, and the demands are to 1. Move Johnson, who is inmate number 158039, to a properly climate-controlled cell with a working toilet. 2. Immediately allow Mr. Johnson to make phone calls to his attorneys. And 3. Stop retaliating against him for reporting on conditions within your prisons. You can keep up with this situation by visiting fighttoxicprisons.wordpress.com or go to Kevin Rashid Johnson's support website at rashidmod.com.
A little heads up about some media worth checking out. This week, the It's Going Down podcast aired an interview with an anarchist in the U.S. who's from Turkey about the Turkish assault on Afrin, one of the cantons of Rojava. Rojava is an autonomous Kurdish region in northern Syria. Afrin is administered by the Democratic Confederalist PYD and defended by the YPG and YPJ militias, among others. This interview covers some of the history as relevant to anarchists, some of the developments of Rojava through the Syrian civil war, their alliance with the United States, and Rojava's relationship with Turkey and other states involved in the proxy wars in the region. This interview is well worth a listen and hopefully can aid you in organizing reading groups or fundraisers or demonstrations in your area in support of Rojava and against the Turkish government's current assaults on its own people as well as across the borders. And here's a little jingle from the IGD cast, who is a member of the Channel Zero network of anarchist podcasts. More from all of us at channelzeronetwork.com.
It's going down, and you're invited for what they selling. We ain't buying. There is no running. There is no hiding. There's only fighting or dying. It's going down, and you're invited for what they selling. We ain't buying. There is no running. There is no hiding. There's only fighting or dying.
It's Going Down is a digital community center from anarchist, anti-fascist, autonomous, anti-capitalist, and anti-colonial movements. Our mission is to provide an autonomous and resilient platform to publicize and promote revolutionary theory and action.
Go to itsgoingdown.org for daily updates. Check out our online store for ways to donate, and rate and follow us on iTunes if you like this podcast.
But first, some words from anarchist prisoner Sean Swain.
What you say, what you say, what you say, what? We're caught like a fly!
This past week, the United States government was in the midst of a shutdown. The government was closed. Everybody in the media was talking about how catastrophic this is, that lawmakers cannot agree on a budget and also cannot agree on a continuing resolution that keeps government open in the absence of a budget. The Congress then kicked the can 3 weeks down the road. Personally, I'm in favor of a government shutdown. When I heard it was coming, I packed a go bag, including some packages of ramen noodles and several changes of socks. After all, War and Corruptional is a government facility, and it operates largely on federal block grants that come from the federal government. And if the federal government shuts down, that means the corrections officers have no paychecks coming. And there's nothing stopping me from hopping the fence and heading for home. But not so fast. Sadly, a government shutdown is not a government shutdown at all. When lawmakers cannot agree on keeping the government open, the only things that shut down are the non-essential government functions. That is, when government closes, the Senate and the House still get paychecks. That means the people most responsible for government shutdown, those most incapable of performing their jobs, continue to get paid for their non-performance. The military also continues to get paid. So does the post office and schools. In fact, I've been looking around and it appears that everything in government was still functioning. I think that this government shutdown resulted in the temporary closing of the statue of bigotry, 2 libraries, and a campground at a national park. Everything else was still functioning. My go bag is still sitting there in my locker box collecting dust. Well, short of a couple packages of ramen noodles. Dinner last night really sucked. So, a few observations about this government shutdown. First, the only thing that shut down was the non-essential functions of government that the government itself recognizes as being non-essential. So what do I know? But aren't those the things that even from a higher art position, the government shouldn't be doing anyway? And when those non-essential functions were restored, doesn't that mean that the government is now spending tax money to run government functions that even the government recognizes the taxpayers don't need? So aren't we better off with a government shutdown than we are with the government at full steam? Second observation. If we're better off with a government shutdown, then instead of trying to avoid the next government shutdown and keep the government running, shouldn't we instead be working to expand the shutdown? I can't recall a single time that the courts ever did anything I thought was beneficial. I think we should expand the government shutdown to include the courts. I suspect that most Americans would agree that we should put a stop payment on checks to all the members of Congress, permanently. And I can't imagine a reason to give the orange bastard in the White House a single dime. We could close all the schools that are failing, bring home the military from everyone else's yards all over the planet. And since we now have Skype and instant messaging on all cell phones, We have little use for those highways. We can have face-to-face communication without being there, which means we can let most of the roads go. So what's left? Well, nothing. Last observation. Given the paralysis of government to accomplish the simplest things, are these really the folks we want in charge of our world? It occurred to me that we could trade out members of Congress with just about anybody else and we'd improve things. Imagine, for instance, if we traded out lawmakers for professional wrestlers. Wouldn't that be more fun? At least with pro wrestlers, we'd have some entertainment. We might end up with the same end result, stalemate, stagnation, but the process would draw crowds of thousands and make millions on pay-per-view that could pay down the debt. The Speaker of the House and Senate Majority Leaders smacking the opposition with fold-out chairs? So shouldn't we strive for a permanent and complete shutdown of government? I can't think of anything more exciting than that. This is anarchist prisoner Sean Swain from War and Corruption in Lebanon, Ohio. If you are listening, you are the resistance.
You can write to Sean Swain at Sean Swain 243-205, Warren CI, P.O. Box 120, 5787 State Route 63, Lebanon, Ohio 45036. Updates on his situation and more writings by Sean can be found at seanswain.org.
Before we get to the audio from Jalil Muntaqim, I'd like to take a moment to remember speculative fantasy fiction author Ursula K. Le Guin, who passed at the age of 88 this week. Ursula K. Le Guin submitted her first story for publishing at the age of 11 in roughly 1940, though it was rejected. She authored 24 books, including The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed, plus numerous short stories in various genres, including many dealing with themes of environmentalism, capitalism, anarchism, Taoism, gender, sexuality, and power. Although she did not call herself an anarchist, she is considered a welcome fellow traveler by many and an inspiration to the imaginations of those aspiring towards freedom. She'll be missed. Here we will play most of her acceptance speech from 2014 of the Lifetime Achievement Award from the National Book Foundation's National Book Awards as presented by Neil Gaiman.
I think hard times are coming when we will be wanting the voices of writers who can see alternatives to how we live now and can see through our fear-stricken society and its obsessive technologies to other ways of being, and even imagine some real grounds for hope. We will need writers who can remember freedom, poets, visionaries, the realists of a larger reality. Right now, I think we need writers who know the difference between production of a market commodity and the practice of an art. Developing written material to suit sales strategies in order to maximize corporate profit and advertising revenue is not quite the same thing as responsible book publishing or authorship. Thank you, brave applauders. Yet, I see sales departments given control over editorial. I see my own publishers in a silly panic of ignorance and greed charging public libraries for an e-book 6 or 7 times more than they charge customers. We just saw a profiteer try to punish a publisher for disobedience, and writers threatened by corporate fatwa. And I see a lot of us, the producers, who write the books and make the books, accepting this, letting commodity profiteers sell us like deodorant and tell us what to publish and what to write. Well, I love you too, darling. Books, they're not just commodities. The profit motive is often in conflict with the aims of art. We live in capitalism. Its power seems inescapable. So did the divine right of kings. Any human power can be resisted and changed by human beings. Resistance and change often begin in art, and very often in our art, the art of words. I have had a long career and a good one, in good company. Now here, at the end of it, I really don't want to watch American literature get sold down the river. We who live by writing and publishing want and should demand our fair share of the proceeds. But the name of our beautiful reward is not profit. Its name is freedom. Thank you.
My name is Virginia, and I will be your host for today's show. Today you'll be hearing part 3 of an interview with Jalil Muntaqim. Jalil is a political prisoner who was affiliated with the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army. He has been in prison since 1971. The first 2 parts of this interview were aired on 2 previous episodes of the Prison Radio Show. Jalil was arrested as part of a concerted effort on the part of the United States government to repress the struggle for Black liberation, and in particular the Black Panther Party and the Black Liberation Army, both of which were specifically targeted through the counterintelligence program, most often known as COINTELPRO. COINTELPRO was an FBI program started in 1956 and officially declared disbanded in 1971 after activists broke into an FBI office and gave documents exposing the program to the media. For years, through COINTELPRO, the FBI disrupted and sabotaged organizations they deemed a threat to the U.S. government. As a result of COINTELPRO, many Panthers and BLA members ended up in prison on flimsy evidence, and many of them served decades in prison or are still incarcerated, like Jalil. In the third part of this interview, Jalil talks about a wide range of topics. He starts with what it was like to be in prison during the Attica Uprising in 1971, and moves on to talk about his take on the political ideas of intercommunalism, internationalism, and nationalism. He talks about what the word revolution means to him and explains the phrase that appears on many of his blog posts, "We are our own liberators." You can always find more information about Jalil by visiting his website at freejalil.com, or now by visiting the Prison Radio Show's blog at prisonradioshow.wordpress.com to hear parts 1 and 2 of our interview with Jalil.
I was arrested on August 28, 1971. Right, so today's August 10th? So in 18 more days will mark my 46th year inside prison. Okay. So Attica happened in September. So I was in city jail, county jail when it occurred. In 1977, I was paroled from California prison and brought to New York State. And the first prison where I was actually held for any period of time was in Attica. Okay. I found that the sacrifice that was made by those individuals, those prisoners, was profound in changing the conditions inside prisons from what it was then to pre-Attica to it was post-Attica, right? Profound. However, because of our short-term memory in terms of history, a lot of that is reverting, and a lot of the gains that they had achieved are being taken back, all right? As we find in much of everything that had occurred during that period of time in our history of struggle is now being taken back. I mean, everything from affirmative action to job security and et cetera, right? So we find it across the board, right? So for a period of time, prisoners had more say-so, conditions inside prison, right? They had more influence in conditions inside prisons. Since then, the guards union has fought to retake that influence, right, and redefine the issues of rehabilitation and conditions from which prisoners can improve self-improvement, right? They want to deny those type of programs. Why? Because, again, it's big business. And they want to maintain the status quo of big business, right? So the various programs that we've had in prisons that weren't once maintained and controlled by prisoners no longer are. I'll give you an example. When I was in Eastern Correctional Facility, we started a computer lab. Prisoners started a computer lab. They did everything to get their computer lab started, and it lasted for about 3 years. I was one of the directors of the program. I would be signing the certificates for each class when the students graduated from the program. I would sign the certificates, the superintendent signed it, and also the superintendent of the institution, and also the supervisor of the school building signed the certificate, congratulating the guys for their successful program. The program was so successful, the guys were leaving prison and actually getting jobs, from their vocational training of this program. And lo and behold, the state decided to take it over, right? And within 2 years of taking it over, the program diminished in terms of what was being taught, right? Why? Because it was successful. And so we find that when prisoners actually have influence and are able to develop programs for self-improvement, more often than not, they're very successful, right? But when the state takes control of it, it becomes less successful because it goes contrary to what the state actually wants to achieve, right? Generally speaking, right, wants to achieve. And that's a problem. So, unfortunately, some people would make the argument that conditions are reverting back to pre-Attica inside prison. Now, this is not to say that, let me qualify that to a certain extent. The conditions of struggle that was going on in the streets in 1960s, 1970s, etc., was reflected to what was going on in struggles inside prison. There was a direct correspondence and relationship between the two. All right. So today, what you find going on in the streets today, gang violence, drug dealing, and etc., is reflective of what's inside prison today. All right. So if there's not a social or political movement in the streets, you're not going to find that kind of interaction or connection inside prison. It doesn't exist. So what we have in prisons is basically is a revolving door and a reflection of what's going on in the community at large, right? So as things evolve, right, and put the R on the revolve, right, we will eventually come to a new understanding in regards to prisoners' consciousness, reflecting the consciousness of struggle in the streets. Right. We're not there yet, but there's slowly some development towards that end, particularly with the advent of the Black Lives Movement and those kinds of struggles. Right. It serves to raise consciousness, social consciousness, both inside and outside of prison. Right.
Do you think there's a connection between those kinds of struggles and the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement on the outside and this work strike that happened that commemorated Attica in its call out that happened last year?
Sure. There's a connection, but then also social conditions also creates conditions for resistance as well, right? So if you have a repressive social condition, then naturally there's some point in time where it reached that nodal point, and those who are being repressed is going to rebel. So the conditions in Alabama and other places where those calls for action was taken, we can basically look at those conditions of repression and recognize that it had reached a point, that nodal point, from the quantitative conditions to the qualitative conditions of resistance, right, where they could not take it anymore and they had to fight back. Naturally, what was going on in the community at large, a fight back, right, against police repression had a corresponding effect, right? In my youth, right, I consider being a revolutionary as being a militant, right? And that if you're not a militant, then or radical, then there's no way that you can possibly identify yourselves as being a revolutionary, right? As I've matured, I have amended that idea. I think the process of revolution is evolution. Right? If you look at the word revolution and you remove the R, you have the word evolution. And so therefore, I think that our evolutionary process as human beings, right, consciously trying to move forward to be better human beings is a revolutionary process, right? I think revolution is a normal way from which we should look at our relationship to each other as human beings and our relationship that we should have with society at large, right, or with our governments at large. I think revolution is a process of the social development of human beings, right, from one stage of quantity or qualitative development to a higher stage of quantity and qualitative development. If we look from every time that there's a new development, whether it be in manufacturing or in new invention, etc., they qualify it and identify it as being revolutionary, right? This new technology is revolutionary, right? The same process goes through with our interrelationships as human beings, right? Our capacity, for instance, we talked about this in our letters, our capacity to love is one that has inclusive of the idea of revolution, right? Che Guevara has made a famous statement, and I paraphrase it, that he says that a revolutionary is motivated by a high sense of love, right? Love for humanity, right? And so, inasmuch as we would consider being militant, subject to who we have to confront, the oppression that we have to confront, right? Our highest ideal in the process is a greater expansion of love as human beings. And that in and of itself is a revolutionary process. We have a long ways to go, okay? And much of it's due to the fact that our systems creates divisions. It creates divisions between peoples, create divisions between classes, right? And so how do we resolve those divisions, right? Class struggle, right? National liberation struggles, right? And that in and of itself, because of the degree of opposition that you have to confront, makes it militant, makes it radical, right? And any new thing, right, as we know, the old die hard, right? For the new thing to come into existence, something has to give away, right? And that process, dialectically, is a revolutionary process. I'm an internationalist, okay? We may qualify that from the jump, right? I'm an internationalist. However, I recognize that there's a process, evolutionary process from one stage of development to the next stage of development. Here in the United States, particularly in regards to black people in the United States, some of them identify themselves as African Americans, right? Which is an issue, right? Because America has never been in support of Africa, And so how are you going to identify yourself being African American when one half of you is in opposition to the other half? That's a problem for me. Okay. So we have a people who has never really had, since the days of slavery, has never had a identity of their own, right? The messenger nation of black people in this country comes from various tribes off the west coast of Africa, right? We have also interactions with the Portuguese, with the Dutch, with the English, with the indigenous population of America. So this mixture of blood, this miscegenation of blood, in my opinion, has created a new African, all right? That's the ideal, new African. And that being the case, this miscegenation, creating this new African, genetically, right? Let's look at it for what it is, genetic, a new African, right? Then there's a need for us to identify ourselves nationally, all right? So in that aspect, I think there's a process in which our freedom is subject to recognizing our identity, right? And also being able to take control in regards to our destiny socioeconomically and politically. Now, if that should need be also appropriating national territory in order to secure ourselves and evolve our security geographically, that would be nationalism. All right? But I think what I consider as part of a process towards internationalism, I still believe that there needs to be the breaking down of geographical barriers and borders, right? That we are all species on this planet. Well, that's the highest ideal. We're not there yet, okay? Where we can actually break down these barriers and national divisions that we have amongst ourselves as species on this planet, all right? So intercommunalism speaks to that, the breaking down of these barriers and these borders, right? And these divisions as species on the planet, right? So that is the highest ideal, but it's a process, right? And for us, I think moving towards liberated territory, creating a nation state, if needed be. And I said I'm saying that it must be, but if it's necessary to secure us as a people, particularly in North America, then that's what we need to do. Right? Black Belt South is the territory of the provisional government of New Africa, right? And I am a citizen of the provisional government of New Africa. I identify myself as a New African, right, and a Muslim, right? And so therefore we'll continue to struggle for the securing of the national territory, right, of Kush, if that is necessary for the survival of this classification of the species on this planet. Yeah. Yeah, the story is this here. We got to stop waiting for someone to come lead us, all right? Many of us who have been influenced by the philosophy and the ideals of Christianity, right, and also Islam, and some say Judaism, where they believe that the Messiah is going to return, right? This apocalyptic idea that the world's coming to an end and the Messiah is going to return, then we will all be free, right? I oppose that. I'm not saying that it may happen or may not happen. I have no idea. I'm not a psychic. However, in the interim, there are issues that we have to confront now, right? And the process for which we do it, we have to take ownership, right, of these conditions. And so therefore, I raise the phrase that we are our own liberators. Stop waiting for somebody to come and liberate us. It ain't gonna happen, right? If you ain't prepared to do the work, right, then you're prepared to suffer, right? And so That's my personal model, right? And me getting the hell out of penitentiary included is that we are our own liberators. All right, so I got to fight to get out of prison, right? And with the support of people who believe similarly to me, hopefully I will gain their support, and we can liberate ourselves in the whole process. All right, but that's the idea from it.
Up next, we are going to hear the fourth and final part of our interview series with Jalil Muntaqim. Jalil is a political prisoner and former Black Panther who has been incarcerated since 1971. In this final section of the interview, Jalil shares his thoughts on spirituality and politics, ISIS, and the far right in the United States, and shares a message for rappers. You can always find out more about Jalil and his struggle to be released from prison in New York State by visiting freejalil.com.
My personal, we all have our own path, right? That may lend or may not lend to some degree of spirituality, recognizing that our existence on this planet is more than just materiality, okay? That our physical existence is more than material. My path is peculiar in and of itself, okay? So I don't know whether people would be interested in my personal evolution, right, of spiritual development, but let's begin here, all right? I was baptized as a Catholic, all right? My mother baptized myself and my sister as Catholics. I went to Catholic school 5 years, and 5 years of Catholic school. And then left Catholic school. This is San Francisco, St. Dominic's. Left Catholic school and then went into public school, right? My mother was always conscious as an African woman, black woman. She was trained as an African dancer, right? And her teacher who taught her African dance, basically gave her some understanding of what being African is. And she gave that to my sister and I, teaching us African dance at a younger age. And she always told us, you're not a Negro, you're not a colored, you are an African. You're not a nigger, you're an African, right? So we was raised with the consciousness of being African, right? My sister and I, growing up. So that consciousness was there. At some point, I didn't longer have faith in the higher being, right? And became, for the most part, agnostic, right? If it is, it is. If it ain't, it ain't, okay? And part of my process in being in the party, it also led me to the ideas of being communist, right? And naturally, we know that communism is based upon material. It's materialistic, physical philosophy. That did not necessarily sit well with me totally, right? Because I always believed that there was something more. All right. My mom came to my house back in 1971, and she said, I don't know what you're doing. She came to my apartment and took me in my bedroom and asked, she said, I don't know what you guys are doing, right? But whatever it is that you're doing, we got a problem. I got a problem with that, right? I want you to go see this woman. Now, this is a very personal story that I'm telling you guys. And I said, Mom, what you talking about? What you talking about, Willis? She said, I want you to go see this woman. I said, okay. So my girlfriend at the time, I said, when she left, she came and asked me, she said, what your mom want? She said, she want to go see this woman about something. I said, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, she think I'm into something. Well, of course I was. And so my girlfriend got on my case. So you going to see? I said, I'm not going to see this woman. She said, you scared? So she jumped all up and said, you scared? I said, well, if I'm going, you're going with me. So I'm going to go see this woman. Apparently this woman was a psychic. right? My aunt had been seeing a psychic, and the psychic had told her to tell her niece that her son is in trouble or will be in trouble, right? So I went to go see this woman, and she told me 5 things, right? She told me I was going to come into a lot of money. She told me that my girl was going to have a child. She told me that I was going to have a liaison with a couple of women, stay with them. She told me there would be a car accident, right? And if it's a car accident and a shootout, you're going to go to prison for a very long time. Yeah. So I forgot about the whole thing. You know, I thought it was just, you know, who believes this crap? You know, who believes this stuff? That people have this capacity to look into the future or have this, you know, this, I don't know, some people say it's a gift, some people say it's a curse. I don't know. So, other things that she said happened did in fact happen, right? And I'm sitting in San Francisco County Jail, and it dawned on me what this woman was talking about, or what she said, and that made me go back and to start investigating how could she do this and other people can't, or not have yet to find the ways to do so. So that gave me the study of esoteric sciences, led me to the study of exoteric sciences. And anytime that I devote myself to something, I go all the way. All right? I don't half-step on when I put my mind to something. And so my esoteric sciences led me to the study of astrology, magic, Wicca, voodoo, comparative religion, all the forms of metaphysics, right? You name it, I studied it, all right? Everything. And so by the time I got with Jamil Al-Amin and Max Sanford, I was essentially almost opened, prepared, right, for something more institutional, more structured in regards to my path. Now, one of the things that I had argued with them in regards to the Islam was that it's not like Christianity where I got to turn the other cheek, right? Some people slapping on the side of the face and you got to turn the cheek and give them the other side of the face, right? It was one of the philosophers of Christendom, and they said no, right? And they showed me a passage in the Quran where it says fight turmoil oppression wherever you may find it, right? And I said, well, as long as I continue to fight, I might be down with this here. So that was a point, a convergence, you know, of my politics and my religion. All right. Now, also, I've always been a student of science. So part of the process of why my question of being agnostic was always in question was having studied physics and knowing that our physical being is not all material. For example, as we're sitting here right now, right, a lot of people don't think about this, as we're sitting here right here, neutrinos are passing through our bodies, right? So there are subatomical particles that are penetrating us as we sit here and talking and saying that we're alive and living in the whole bit in this dimension of our existence, right? Also, light can travel through our bodies, right? When you get an X-ray, that's light particles traveling through your body and taking a picture of you of what's going on inside you, all right? That also indicates to us the subatomical nature of our existence, that we are not as solid and material as we, believe ourselves to be, all right? That we comprise of the known 108 elements of the known 113, 115 elements of the planet, right? And we know that our substance comes from the planet, right? And we will return to the earth, right? That this existence of ours is temporary, right? And so when we give a real look at who we are as human beings, right, we have to basically say that there's something different, right? Being a human being, right? And our relationship to the cosmos, you might say, right? To the planet. And when we raise our level of consciousness, whether it be on a spiritual level, right, or on a practical level, right, we have to really, really accept the fact that there's more. Now, if there's life after death, anybody come back, let me know. I'm waiting for someone to come back and let me know what it's going to be like, right, if there in fact is. But one thing that I cannot dismiss is the issue of spirituality and the spirit, right? And after this physical composition that we call the human structure decomposes, does memory, does the thought process continues, all right? And H. Rap Brown or Jamil Adami once told me, he said, listen, if you're a good person, right, after you die, right, then if you got a belief system, you don't lose nothing, right? But if you die and it does exist and you ain't got a belief system, you might lose everything. All right, so being a good person that I think that I am, I decided to make that contract, right, on a spiritual level. And so that's where I try to, my path, that's been my path, right? And like I said, everybody has a different path. May not have a path at all that leads to spirituality or any form of orthodox religion or non-orthodox religion. But it will lend to some level, some degree of recognizing that our spiritual or our material world is not be all and end all. Right? I don't believe that. I believe there's something more. I think being on this planet gives you an obligation and responsibility, whether it's just the issues of procreation, right, or just the issues of loving another human being. We have an obligation to self-preservation. And self-preservation is broad. It's broad and it's ideal, okay? And it's not only for the individual, but it's for humanity at large and the planet, right? Self-preservation. Unfortunately, Trump and Bannon doesn't believe that, or at least their self-preservation is very exclusive, or not inclusive, all right? And I got a problem with that. Okay.
You're listening to the final part of an interview with Jalil Muntaqim, a political prisoner and former Black Panther who is currently incarcerated in New York State.
There's always been a crisis. The U.S. empire has always been based upon war. Right, from its inception, right? The first war was what? A War of Independence, then the War of 1812, then the Civil War, right? Then the annexation, the wars, the Indian Wars, the wars against Mexico. Shall we continue? Right? The wars in Panama, right? So the United States has been a system of government that's been its lifeblood has been based upon crises. And both internal and as well as external. Okay. So when we look at what's going on today, we can historically quantify it as being a backlash to the Obama administration. All right. the Trump administration, the backlash to the Obama administration. However, it is also representative of a deep-seated, deep-rooted philosophy within this country, all right, which is a problem. I'll give you more contemporary concern. You may not have heard this, but I've been reading about it. It was had an op-ed in the New York Times last week, where HBO is developing a TV series called The Confederates. And this TV program is imagining that the Confederates won the Civil War and slavery exists today. That speaks volumes to a mindset, right? And in my opinion, it will exacerbate the conditions of white supremacy, right? This alt-right conservative ideal, right? It will support that ideal. It will give solace to those individuals who uphold those ideals, all right? Where art reflects society, okay? That's a problem. So when we look at the U.S., and again, we'll talk about the continuum of struggle, right? We can see that there's two competing ideals, right? That has been consistent with the inception of the United States. And one has based upon this idea that white supremacy is beholden to no one other than white nationalist way of life, right? And the other competing idea is more humanitarian, right? Equalitarian, a belief that we are, that the destiny of this country is multiracial and multi-religious. All right. So those are two competing philosophies that are competing, that exist in the United States. So this new administration is a reflection of one of those philosophies, where Obama reflected the other side of that equation. So as we move forward, we can see that there is going to continue to be conflict, right? Like I said before, from the beginning, this country's inception is based upon conflict. It's always been in conflict, and it seems that we'll continue to be engaging in some form of conflict. So now it's a matter of the new millennium, this younger group of people, right? The next generation, what side are they going to take? And how they're going to move forward in building a better union, as Obama would say. And he was not one of my favorites either, right? I have to admit that, but it was historic to see his election. But he also represented the capitalist ideal, right? And that was a problem. But so in and of itself, the system as capitalism creates divisions, as I mentioned earlier, and is divisive, right? Divisive in and of itself. And so we can see that going forward. Now, naturally, the foreign policy of the Trump administration, subject to the idea of alt-right conservatism, right, and exclusivism of the United States, creates conflict in the world, right? It's a shifting of superpowers in the world. In my book, We Are Own Liberators, I made an argument between the superpowers of China, United States, and Europe. And now we see how China is now trying to take over the mantle of being the new superpower by virtue of Trump withdrawing by his philosopher leader, his Rasputin, Bannon, trying to influence the kingdom, and his alt-right vision of, I don't know what you want to call it, being exclusive, right? That's a problem. And so I see that there's going to be, again, continuing conflict. There's going to be a shifting of markets, right, in the struggle of controlling of markets, and how that's going to be played out. So there's going to be less polarity amongst peoples in nation states, and more divisions. That's the future, unless, of course, the next generation, this generation, challenges that, and we will find out whether or not they are capable of doing so. Unfortunately, we're only by virtue of the electoral process, but we'll be seeing what they're capable of doing so with the midterms elections, and then what happens in 2020. The issues of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, which I abhor both, they are a Frankenstein monster, okay? They come out of two dynamics. One is the U.S. colonial influences in the Middle East, right? And the other is the Zionist influence in the Middle East, right? Those two dynamics created conditions for which these militant organizations to arise, all right? Both Al-Qaeda and ISIS, okay? So if you was to deal with those situations in and of themselves, particularly what's going on in the Middle East, that would not affect what's going on between the rise of fascism and this alt-right philosophy. All right? All right. Two dynamics, both of them wrong. Both of them going in the wrong direction. Okay. The issue of the alt-right is a question of the issue of, for the most part, white supremacy. When we look at the demographics, the world demographics, right, we have to concede the fact that the greater population is a people of color, all right? And so therefore, the minority world population, and to be brutally honest about this, are feeling threatened, right? They're seeing their control and their demographics being diminished over a period of time by the darker complexion people of the planet, right? That's being brutally honest. And therefore, they are trying to shore up and preserve their existence. That's the reality of it, you know. And those who really see that, who are visionaries and see that, are making these drastic efforts and creating this this philosophy, right? And this world dynamic. And unfortunately, we had an example of that by the World War II and the Hitler regime, right? Who also created this philosophy of supremacy. The United States is unique in as much as the ideal of the United States, from what its inception. If you look at the Declaration of Independence, for example, right, which I quoted in my last one of my last blogs in regards to what is a political prisoner, and I raised that question, right? The ideal of the United States is one of pluralism, right, rather than one of exceptional and divisions between people, right? The idea of the United States has one been of multiracial and multi-ethnic and multi-religious, all right? However, the alt-right, coming back again in the history of the United States from the Confederacy, right, is in denial of that. And they're trying to change it back into, or trying to resurrect right? This idea of white supremacy, or white is right and the might of white. The only thing more that I can say about ISIS is that I believe that it's a creation, is a manufactured creation based upon the politics of colonialism, right? I also think that it was a mistake from the Bush administration when they told the lie to the American people about Saddam Hussein having weapons of mass destruction, right, and invading Iraq, right. That also precipitated and created conditions for ISIS to come into existence, all right. But the problem that I have with them is the question of them engaging in actions that kill civilians, all right. I abhor that type of suicide bombing and the killing of civilians. That is wrong. There's no way you can justify it. It is not part of Islam, period. All right. Now, does that says that Muslims should not have a caliph? No, it does not say that. Muslims should have every right to establish a caliph in as much as Christendom can have a pope. All right? Every right. But it's the method from which you do it. And their method of doing it is contrary to the principles of Islam and the practices of the Prophet Muhammad. And that's what the problem I have with ISIS. All right? If they were just engaging in anti-colonial struggles to liberate the Middle East from the influences of Zionism and imperialism, no problem. But the methodology from which they are engaging is wrong. And I cannot accept it and will not support it. We want to tell them rappers out there, right? You guys been using the history of the BPP, the Black Panther Party, in your songs and in your tributes and etc. Right? But you have no relationship whatsoever. You don't talk to BPPs. You don't talk to former members of Black Panther Party. You guys, right, need to develop a relationship that is more than just commodifying our history. Right? And so I got a problem with that. Right? So I want to make sure they get that. They know that. All right? Stop pimping us. Straight like that. Yes, I want to thank you and you for coming and doing this, taking the time and the energy doing this. I have to recognize your own sacrifice, coming from Canada, taking the time, the energy, the expense, to come down here and giving recognition to the existence of political prisoners, right? We need 100 times more of you guys to do the same, across the board, right, both nationally and internationally. Speaking of what's going on here in the United States, hopefully this piece, once it's transcribed or edited, et cetera, will lend to people to recognize that there is people here in the United States in prison who has something to say, right? And we need to figure out ways how to get that word out amongst many, right? Mumia has been very successful in doing so. From his own perspective, Leonard Peltier has been the struggle to free Oscar was greatly successful, right? And I think that can be replicated often, more often, right? Especially when we let people know that we exist. And if this lends to that, then I'm grateful.
That was the fourth and final part of an interview with Jalil A. Muntaqim, a political prisoner and former Black Panther Party member who is currently incarcerated in New York State. You can find the entire edited interviews with Jalil online at prisonradioshow.wordpress.com or at freejalil.com.
Thanks again to Prison Radio for sharing this audio. This is the Final Straw Radio, and I'm Bursts. Just a little heads up, too. We're messing with the podcast a little bit, not so much in format, but more so in distribution. So we set up a SoundCloud that contains the latest 3 episodes. And all of our episodes that are up in the podcast stream are now up on YouTube, though the video only plays our shows, you'd hear it, and with an episode image in the background, so it's not all that exciting for video. But if those platforms are your deal, swing by and follow us. Also, we'd like to remind y'all that we're up on iTunes. If you go into that blasted program and rate our content or write reviews, it fucks with the algorithms and will make the show more visible to wider audiences. Also, I'd like to reiterate what we say at the introduction of the show all the time, that we have a free edition of the show that's 59 minutes in length and falls within the requirements of the FCC here in the United Snakes for radio broadcast. If you have a community or college radio station in your area and you'd like to hear us up on the airwaves, getting into people's cars, getting into folks' houses, jail cells, workplaces, or whatever by the magical accident of radio science, check out our radio broadcasting link at the website, thefinalstrawradio.noblogs.org. Hit us up on social media or email us to get the ball rolling. In addition, we suggest getting some friends together to petition the local radio overlords to get us on their station. Finally, just to remind y'all, we love hearing feedback and show suggestions. Finding a different person or persons every week to fill an hour with interesting content is hard work, and cues from y'all really help us plug away at this volunteer endeavor. So you can email us at thefinalstrawradio@riseup.net and get that started.